All right, good evening. We are getting into the Seventh Commandment tonight, and hopefully shouldn't take terribly long to go through. Pretty straightforward. Let's join together in reading the Seventh Commandment. You shall not steal. Let's try that again. Let's read it out loud together. You shall not steal. What does this mean? We should fear and love God, that we do not take our neighbor's money or property or get it by dishonest dealing, but help him to improve and protect his property and business. So, what do you think God is protecting in the Seventh Commandment? Aaliyah.
Our neighbor's possessions.
All right. Like it when students say stuff, protecting stuff. Yeah, he's protecting our property and our possessions, and then our neighbor's property and possessions as well. Now there are some different ways that God gives us our property and possessions, legitimate ways. I won't deny that there are illegitimate ways to gain those things, but that is not coming from God. So looking at the good, godly ways that we receive our possessions, we've got a few passages there. First of all, 2 Thessalonians 3. Brody, read that, please.
In fact, when we were with you, this is our command you. If anyone does not want to work, he should not eat. Indeed, we hear that some among you are idle, but not busy working, but being busybodies in the Lord Jesus Christ, we command and urge these people to work quietly and eat with their own bread.
All right, so what would you say is the first way that God gives us our possessions?
Working.
Yeah, through work. That there's that passage there. If a person refuses to work, then he's not going to eat. Teaching us not to live off of, or intentionally live off the charity of others. Second passage, Aaliyah, 1 Kings 21.
But Naboth said to Ahab, "May I be cursed by the Lord if I were to give you the inheritance from my father."
Yeah, what is an inheritance?
Like something that gets passed down to you.
Yeah, something that gets passed down to you from usually who?
Like your parents who read that.
Yeah, and when does that usually happen? When they die. Yeah. Usually it happens when they die. It's indicated in their last will and testament. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
How are you?
Could be worse, I guess.
Yep.
There you go.
All right, thank you. And then looking at the third passage, Matthew 2, verse 11, Jalen.
After they went into the house and saw the child with Mary, his mother, they bowed down and worshipped him. They opened their treasures and offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
So the third way that we receive our possessions from God?
Gifts.
Gifts, yeah. You could also maybe throw in a fourth here that isn't covered, but it is legitimate. Rewards, being rewarded especially for good things. But looking at the term was already defined for us. Inheritance are possessions or property that passes along to another person, again, usually at the owner's death. So with that in mind then, how can we break the seventh commandment? Matthew 14, Jada.
After the feeding of the 5,000, the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of what was left over from the broken pieces.
And so, first one here. How can we break the seventh commandment? Maybe first of all, we should understand. What did the disciples do with the food that was left over? Collected it. What did they not do? Okay. Or when you're at lunch at school, what happens inevitably to a lot of the food that is served to the students? It gets thrown away, doesn't it? So really, the first one is wasting our food, possessions, money, etc. We are, unfortunately, a very wasteful country. 46% I just saw not long ago of all food waste comes from the food industry. So people maybe not finishing their food at restaurants or whatever, and then it gets disposed of. But that's still a large quantity. God doesn't want us to waste what He's given us. Now, are we going to be perfect with that? No. You know, if I accidentally let some sour cream go bad in the refrigerator because I accidentally forgot about it, Jenica, am I sinning?
No.
Not necessarily, no. But you know, if we're just not, you know, eating leftovers because we don't want to eat them anymore, okay, now there might be an issue there. Unless you're eating it for like the 10th time, that gets a little repetitive, right? Of course, think about those cultures in this world that you can have anything you want for breakfast, lunch, or dinner as long as it's rice. Those places in the world where they mainly eat just rice. Pretty bland diet, wouldn't you say, Macy? Yeah, but they do it because, well, they have no other option. All right, next passage. You're going to have to open your Bibles to Luke chapter 10. Luke 10, 30 to 37. Did you get some food to eat? No?
No, I don't want it.
You don't? Okay. I put your stuff over there on the other desk. You don't like sloppy joes?
No, I was just like, I wasn't hungry.
Okay. I respect that. I just want to make sure you had the opportunity to eat, especially since you were serving.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yep. Luke 10, 30 to 37. Jenica's getting close. That's good because she's going to be the one reading. You got it?
Yep.
All right. Can you handle the whole thing?
Yep.
Awesome. Luke 10, 30 to 37. Let's listen carefully.
Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. He fell dead. It just so happened that a priest was going down that way. But when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. The same way, a Levite also happened to
A
go
Levite.
But when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. A Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was. When he saw him, he felt sorry for the man. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. He put them in his own animal, took him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, when he left, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, "Take care of him. Whatever extra you spend, I will repay you when I return." Which of these 3 do you think acted like a neighbor to the man who fell among robbers? The one who showed mercy to him, he replied. Then Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise."
Okay, so the guy who was laying there, left for dead, basically alongside the road, what had happened to him?
Left.
Was that?
You just left there.
He was left there to die. Okay, that's wrong in and of itself, but what else happened in the process of that?
What about the Good Samaritan?
What's that?
We're talking about the Good Samaritan.
No, we're not talking about the Good Samaritan. We're talking about the guy that the Good Samaritan helped. He's left alongside the roadside for dead. What had happened to him? He got beat up, yep, so we got Fifth Commandment issues. All right, but that's not the only thing that happened. It wasn't like just all of a sudden a whole bunch of guys came up to him and started, just wailing on him for no reason. There was a particular reason why they did that. What did they do?
Rob him?
robbed him. So we're talking the actual commandment, theft itself. And in any manner. Now here we see, yeah, it's combined with the physical assault. But it makes no difference if it was, a physical assault or not. It makes no difference if Macy knows that she's being ripped off or doesn't. Either way, it's theft. Next passage, we got Matthew 24:43. Macy.
But understand this, if the master of the house had known at what time of night the
Thief.
thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into.
Okay, and then Leviticus 19, Caleb.
You shall not use dishonest measurement of weight or volume.
All right. So I cut things off. Maybe I should have had Macy read right after Jenica did. But notice, if the owner of the house had known at what hour of the night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch. So that thief, there we go, is sneaking in and doing it when the other person is not aware of it. But now we get to Caleb's passage, not telling us not to use dishonest measurements of weight or volume. What are those? Dishonest measurements of weight and volume. What's he talking about there? Well, how are prices of, let's take produce, for example. A lot of your fruits and vegetables. How do you determine the price?
Wait.
By how much they weigh, right? Well, we have a universal measuring system for what an ounce is, right? And for what a pound is. These days we just have these scales. Back then, they had scales, but it was a different kind of scale. You have like an arm or a lever here, and then right, and it rocked back and forth, and then you had trays that hung. On the one side, you put the produce or whatever it is you're weighing. What would you put on the other side to balance it out? Weights. What would be a dishonest weight? No. I would say this. Something that looks like a weight, something that says it weighs 1 pound, but it actually maybe weighs 1.5 pounds or only a half a pound, depending on whether you're buying or selling, whatever way you use it to manipulate the actual weight of it to your own advantage. And thus you would be cheating somebody out of your money. So there's a different word than cheat that we use to talk about this sort of behavior. When somebody cheats you out of money, or when you are cheating somebody else out of their money, what are you guilty of committing?
Theft.
It is a theft, but it's a specific kind of theft.
Manipulatism.
Not quite. You are manipulating things, perhaps, but that's not what it's called. It starts with the letter F.
Fraud.
There you go. Yeah, very good. Number 3 is fraud. But hold on. Like with the other commandments, we're not just talking about actions. This commandment doesn't just govern the things that we do. It even governs our thoughts, just again like the other commandments. 1 Timothy 6 verse 9, Brody.
Those who want to get rich and fall into temptation and a trap and many foolish and harmful desires, which plunge them into complete destruction and utter ruin. The love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. By striving for money, some have wandered away from the faith and have pierced themselves with many things.
Okay. And then, so it's talking about the love of money. And then Colossians 3 verse 5, Aaliyah talks or defines that love of money a little bit more.
So put to death whatever is worthy of sexual immorality, uncleanness, lust, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry.
Idolatry, yeah. So how would you define the love of money? Or what word would you use to define the love of money?
Lust.
Not quite. I mean, it is a kind of lust, but it's a specific kind.
Greed.
Greed. Yep, is that what you're going to say, Jenica?
Yes.
Okay, yep, greed. We're talking about greed. Notice what Paul says and what he does not say. Some people change Paul's words to say something that he did not actually say. Paul did not say that money is the root of all evil. Money is not good. It is not bad. It just is one of those things that is. It's what we do with money, or our thoughts and our attitudes toward money. Notice he says that it's the love of money that is a root of all kinds of evil. So when we fall in love with it, that it can lead to problems. And so defining those two terms, we already talked about fraud, but fraud is any deception or trickery intended to dishonestly gain money, possessions, property, and the like. And then greed is an excessive desire or love or lust of money, possessions, property, etc. Now take a look at the last passage in that group there, Colossians 3:5. According to the underlined portion, what does God call greed? Idolatry. Yeah. You remember what idolatry is?
Idolization of another god.
Okay, the worship of a god. Why do you think it's appropriate or fitting that he calls it this?
You worship it.
Money is like an idol to some
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, you're really making a false god out of it, right? Remember back when we were looking at the first commandment, we talked about a couple of different basic ways to break the first commandment. One was what was called open or public idolatry, where you are acknowledging something as your god. But then there are the more subtle forms of idolatry called close, or secret idolatry. And that's where you're not acknowledging that thing as your God. However, you are either fearing, loving, or trusting it more than God. And so in this case, greed is called idolatry because you are loving and trusting, maybe even fearing money more than you fear, love, and trust God. So it is very fitting. Now, question 3, according to the bold portion of these passages, what can happen when we give in to greedy thoughts and desires? And this is very important for us.
Could wander away from faith.
Yeah, it can cause us to fall away from saving faith. It's that serious. And so we got to check our desire for money at the door and not fall too much in love with it, or possessions, or things. And this is a very common temptation, especially in a materialistic society like the one that we live in, where we are so inundated with different things and the access to those things that we can get caught up in it and we forget about God. So very frequently, we might think, well, I'm actually doing a pretty good job. I haven't stolen anything. Maybe some of you can honestly say. But we all have broken this commandment with the greedy thoughts, but also, sometimes being a little bit too involved or too connected with our earthly possessions. Having said that, I also do want to talk about it a little bit about the act of theft itself. I think it's sometimes one that doesn't get emphasized a whole lot. I think it's one that Christians feel like, oh, we have a pretty good grasp on this, and so we sometimes tend to gloss over this commandment. But I've known my fair share of Christians who have been guilty of stealing things. I lived in dorm rooms for a number of years. 4 years high school, 4 years college, 3 years seminary. Nothing happened at seminary, of course, but especially in the high school setting, oh yeah. I mean, I was even the victim of theft. My roommate once was a victim of theft. Unfortunately, it goes on. So it is a temptation and it is wrong. And the problem with it is that it can be addictive to the point where we just keep on doing it and our consciences no longer talk to us about it. I even knew a case of a pastor's wife who fell into the temptation and became, in certain situations, addicted to shoplifting. And so it is something that you got to be cautious about because it will get a hold of you. You know, as is the case with any sin, whenever there's a line in the sand, when you cross that line, it's very difficult to go back again. And now that you've crossed it, now it becomes easier to cross the next line and the next and the next and the next. And then all of a sudden, before you realize it, you've established a new thought pattern, a new habit. And it becomes much more difficult to break. So, just a caution against breaking this commandment. Part 4 then, how can we keep the 7th commandment? You've got a few passages there. First of all, 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 and 7. Is it Ladesha reading next? Okay. Not commitment.
Contentment
Yep.
is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we certainly cannot take anything out.
All right, so first of all, to be content with what we have. Some people think that happiness is found in the acquirement of wealth and possessions. But who are some of the most miserable people in this world?
Greedy people.
It is the wealthy people. The wealthy people, because they thought that they could find happiness in acquiring things. That's not where happiness comes from. Happiness really comes from God Himself. And having that relationship with Him through Christ. And if we have Christ, we really have it all, don't we? I mean, what else do we need than Christ, ultimately? I mean, there really is nothing else. You know, whom have I in heaven but you, and earth has no one I desire besides you, Lord. Because if I have Christ, I have eternal life in heaven. You know, if I have that, I have the inheritance of heaven. And nothing in this world can top that. The next passage, we're not going to read that. Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. You'll hear that in the next round of classes next year, or maybe you heard it in the previous year, depending on where you're at. But this is the parable of the talents, where a master was leaving, and he gave different amounts of talents to each of his servants. One got 5 talents, one got 2 talents, one got 1 talent. By talent, I'm not talking about a skill or ability, like I'm talented at dribbling the basketball between my legs. No, a talent back then was a very, very redonkulously expensive coin. All right? Insanely expensive coin to the average person. It was I think worth 6,000 days of wages. So many, many, many years worth of income was a talent. And ultimately in this parable, when the master returns and he sees that the first 2 servants, they went and put those talents to work, and each of them doubled what they had been given. And the master commends them and praises them and says, "Well done, good and faithful servants." And so what we see about that is that with what God has given to us, He wants us to be faithful with it. So using our possessions, food, and money faithfully. Next passage, Daniel 6, verse 4. This is somewhat similar. Jalen?
Which one?
Daniel 6:4.
Then the supervisors and satraps kept trying to find a basis for accusation against Daniel in regard to his administration of the kingdom. However, they were unable to come up with an accusation or any advice.
What?
Evidence.
We are doing wonderful. Not just you. I'm not going to just tease you. There have been others as well that have been fumbling over simple words today.
Because he was trustworthy and no neglect of duty or evidence of corruption could be found against him.
All right. So, what was so great about Daniel? How would you characterize the work that he was doing? Very similar to this last one. He was faithful to his job. He was faithful to his job. Next passage. Oh, Genesis 13. We are not going to open our Bibles to that section, just because I can tell you a little bit quicker. So what happened is this. Abraham and Lot, Abraham, his nephew Lot, they both were very wealthy. They both had large flocks. Eventually what happened was there wasn't enough land in the local area, immediate area for the two of them. And so Abraham said, okay, let me know where you want to take your flock, Lot. Wherever you go, I'll go the opposite direction. So Lot decides, you know what? That area down by Sodom and Gomorrah looks pretty nice. I'm going to go down there. He didn't really care about the reputation of the place. It just, hey, this looks like it's going to be a good business opportunity. So he goes down there. Well, while he's living down there, some kings from the north come down and attack Sodom and Gomorrah and some other cities, defeat them, pillage and plunder the city, and take all the wealth and the people as well back with them to their homeland. As they're heading out, Abraham gets word of this, and he musters all of his men, and he goes on this several-day journey. Now, typically back then, how many miles could a person reasonably walk in a day?
40.
Whoa, I got all sorts of answers. You said what? 10?
25.
25?
15.
40.
15?
2.
40.
2. Well, he is
100.
That's how many they walked on the Oregon Trail.
That's the Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail. No, you could reasonably walk 20 miles a day.
I said
Expected. Could do more, could do less, but reasonably 20.
I said
I would say Abraham, the total distance that he was going to have to travel, 80 to 100 miles to chase him down. Ultimately, he did chase him down at a town called Laish. Interestingly enough, whose ruins I've actually seen and quite possibly saw even the very gate that Abraham would have walked through to do this, to rescue him. But what we see here, and here's the answer to number 4. What Abraham did. Protect our neighbor's property and possessions. That's what Abraham did. Now, one more passage there in the list for us. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 24. Kind of reinforces this point. Jada?
Let no one seek his own good, but that of others.
All right. Let no one seek his own good, but also the good of others. And we see that with Abraham. Abraham, at great personal cost to himself, taking away his time, risking his own wealth, his people, goes after and rescues Lot and his possessions. And same with all the others of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the plains and whatnot. Very different than what the attitude that some people might have. You know, some people might think, well, it's not mine, none of my business, I don't have to worry about it. No. You heard of neighborhood watch programs at all? You kind of chuckle at that, Ladesha. Why?
I watch a lot of shows and like it's really funny to see them because I don't know. I just like watching the shows with people who have neighborhood watches.
Okay, and what do you see on them? What's
It's like people don't know how to mind their own business sometimes and they get in everyone's business.
gets a little nosy, doesn't it? There's a downside to this that people get a little too nosy. Yeah. And it's not so much about looking out for the good of others as it is, I'm going to pry into and see what I can find out or interfere with. Yeah. Yeah, then it becomes a problem. But the idea of the neighborhood watch, you would agree, is a good idea in principle. Yeah. Where we are looking out for. It's not just that I am, it's a sin of commission when I go and vandalize somebody's property. That's a breaking of the Seventh Commandment, vandalism. It's a sin when I go and steal somebody's property. But it's also a sin when I see my neighbor's property being broken into or being vandalized and I don't do anything about it. I don't try to, scare them off. I don't try to call the authorities. I'm guilty then of a sin of omission. And that's one thing that Abraham shows. Going back to number 3, being faithful to our job, what are some ways that we can be faithful to our jobs?
Show up on time.
Show up on time. That was one of the big ones that I had in my mind. So being responsible with your time, allowing yourself some extra time maybe in the morning to get there on time.
Prep.
What's that?
Prep. Sorry. Like get stuff ready in the kitchen or like wherever you're working. Or, like,
Okay, so prepare ahead of time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Make an effort to present yourself.
That could be. Yup. You don't want to necessarily be looking like a scrub showing up to work unless if your job is a garbage man, garbage waste disposal or something like that. Then you probably don't want to be dressed like this, right? Probably not a good idea. So dress appropriately for the position. What else?
wear good shoes.
Don't slack off. Right? Don't be lazy.
Don't take too many breaks.
And that would be tied in directly with what I'm saying. Yep, if you're scheduled for 1 or 2 breaks, don't be taking 4 or 5 just because, I got to go smoke a cigarette. No, you do that on the breaks that you have.
Work hard.
Working hard. Yep. This really frustrates me. When I go to most of the grocery stores around here, when I go to Hy-Vee, I don't know about County Fair. I don't go there enough. But when I go to Hy-Vee, when I go to Walmart, I scanned groceries for 7 years. I know the speed at which a checker should be able to reasonably move. And the only ones who move at that reasonable speed is Aldi. Those people, they know how to check and scan groceries. You get Walmart and, or Hy-Vee, yeah, right. Come on, boom, 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 boom. You get into a rhythm and you can move those things through pretty fast. You really can. I still, last time I did grocery store work was August of 2003. I still remember a great deal of the produce codes. I think I've told you that before, right? No? No? I mean,
No.
throw out a fruit or a vegetable. Somebody.
Strawberry.
Well, strawberries don't have a
Oh yeah, those are not.
they don't have a PLU number.
Banana.
Watermelon.
4011. Most likely, well, it depends on what watermelon. It could be 4032.
Tomato.
4032.
Tomato.
Which kind? Let's go Roma. 4087.
Huh?
Beefsteak or Hot House. 4799.
Pepper.
What kind? Green pepper. 4065. Or are you talking jalapeno? 4693. Red. Is red 4088? Red bell pepper? Maybe. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Cilantro 4889. Parsley 4899.
Romaine lettuce.
Romaine lettuce 4640.
A bottle of no.
Cucumber, 4062.
Zucchini.
Ooh. Ooh. You got me on that one. Or is it 4067? No. I have to recheck that one. You might have me on that one.
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprout. Oh, those are scanned.
Pomegranate. Jackfruit.
Potatoes.
Okay, now we're getting way off the reservation. That's great. Russet potatoes.
Huh?
I haven't had to worry about that number forever. I think it might be 4072, but don't quote me on that. So the point being, I still remember my job well, so I know the speed at which they should be moving. Don't be lazy on the job. Don't be lazy on the job. Okay, let's move along. That's right. We got the terms. We talked about being content, and we're gonna come back to this thought in the 9th and 10th commandments, because that really is where this word comes into play the most. There is some connections to the 7th and then 9th and 10th commandments, but being content basically just means to be satisfied with what one has. Aaliyah has an emotional support stuffed animal with her tonight.
It's a snail.
It's a snail? Okay. And then faithful, talking about being faithful, to work hard, to put something to good use, take care of something, and so on. So what about the 7th commandment in our lives? Question number 1. We heard this passage earlier, the one where it says, if you will not work, you will not eat. So in that passage, from 2 Thessalonians, Paul said that people who refuse to work shouldn't eat. How is laziness a breaking of the 7th commandment? How is laziness a breaking of the 7th commandment?
You're stealing the opportunities from yourself.
No, but good. Well, I guess you could say that. You're not being faithful. That's a way of saying you're not being faithful with your time. So I guess I would agree with that. Not an answer that I have up here, because God expects us to be faithful stewards of our time. And because you were here for the lesson on stewardship last year, some of you will get it next year. We talked about how God wants us to be faithful stewards of our time. And so when you're not using your time properly, you are robbing God of the time that He has given to you. So that would be an appropriate answer. However, I was thinking not so much stealing from yourself or stealing from God, but stealing from somebody, from others. In that sense, then, how is this a breaking of the 7th commandment? How are we stealing from others through laziness? Well, if a person isn't working, generally speaking, are they still getting food?
Maybe. If they still live with their parents.
Most likely, yes. I mean, do you hear of massive amounts of people starving to death in our country? No. Do you hear of massive number or good numbers of people who are unemployed?
Yeah.
Better question yet, do you hear of people who are unemployed who are physically fit to be employed?
Yeah.
Where are they getting their food from? They're obviously not dying.
They're
Sympathy people.
partners.
Homeless shelter.
Children.
Well, food doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Where is that food coming from?
Money.
Money. And who is making the money to pay for that food?
Their friends.
Neighbors.
Others. So, yes, how is it laziness or breaking the 7th commandment? You're living off the hard work of others and what they have earned. Charity is work that others do to help support those in need. Now, are there some people who are genuinely in need? Yes. And I want to dispel this trope with you really quickly. True or false? Poor people are lazy.
No.
It depends. Like, I know a good number of poor people who are insanely hard workers. There are some people who work 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Now maybe could they have been lazy in their schooling years and that prevented them from moving up the social economic ladder through better education and better job opportunities? Sure. But don't call them lazy in their adult lives when they're working all those jobs just to try to make ends meet. However, there are those who are lazy. In fact, by the way, what's a panhandler? Have you guys ever heard of that? Panhandler?
Isn't that where they fake to be homeless?
Sometimes, yes. There are some panhandlers who fake it. But a specific kind of homeless or needy person, what sort of activity are they doing? Begging. Yeah. Usually you see them, there's a guy that I've seen plenty of times before outside of Walmart by the east exit, where he's standing there with a sign asking for money, and sometimes somebody will pull up in a car and give out a few bucks or whatever. Don't give money to those people.
You don't know what that means.
That might sound harsh and cruel because there might be some legitimate panhandlers out there. But unfortunately, there are too many what are called professional panhandlers. People who live in perfectly comfortable homes, living perfectly comfortable lives, who do it as a profession because they don't want to hold down an actual job and do actual work. There are stories of people going out panhandling and then jumping into Maseratis or whatever nice luxury car. There are plenty of those stories out there, and they're legitimate stories. It's not just rumor or hearsay. If you really want to give and help the poor, and I encourage you to do so, or people in need, what are some ways to do that?
Buy food for them.
All right. I told you about the Hispanic worker who showed up at my house once. There's a prime example. I didn't just give him money. I took him and we got money. Or we got a sub sandwich, unfortunately, which was a little struggle for him to gum down. But what else? What else can you do?
Buy them like blankets or something.
Sure.
Donate to shelter.
Tangible. There's a great one. Donate to a shelter. Or donate to other charitable organizations who have the means, the mechanisms in place to distribute those things responsibly. Here in Watertown, one of the biggest ones is the Beacon Center. Who knows what the Beacon Center is? Caleb, what is the Beacon Center? I want to hear this from a guy instead of a girl, because a girl I would expect to know it. Extra cool. Well, it often caters and serves more toward the women. And for good reason.
Past helping people, I don't know.
All right.
It's this place where people can go if they've been assaulted,
Okay, victims of domestic abuse and other things. It's usually women and their children. Yep. I got to go in the Beacon Center over Christmas break this year. That place is awesome. The facilities that they have, the size of it, the operations. They've got temporary housing for people who are really in need there. It is phenomenal. So that'd be a great one to donate to, and I've gladly helped to support that in my time up here. But there's a lot of ways to support through these organizations who are able to vet out, okay, you, Jenica, honestly need some extra help. And I'm sure Jalen would agree with that.
And what?
Just in life in general, she needs extra help. I'm making fun of Jenica for a little bit. I'm just kidding, okay? Where she needs extra help, or Macy doesn't need any help, but she's trying to get help just because she wants to mooch it. So they'll serve you and they'll say, no, you're good, because they can look into things like that. So, yeah. All right. Moving on to question number 2. Martin Luther's explanation to the Seventh Commandment helps us understand how we should view the things that others have. When we look at the gifts that God has given to other people, we want to, as he says, help him to improve and protect his property and means of income. open your Bibles to Colossians 3, verses 22 and 23. And this is rehashing some of what we heard a little bit ago and discussed. Colossians 3, verses 22 and 23. It's in the New Testament. This is one of the drawbacks of having all the passages in the lesson packets. You're not as familiar with your Bibles, but I'm stuck between doing that and, how much time do I have to get through stuff? I also used to give out books of the Bible quiz to my students at the start of the year where they had to know in order all the books of the Bible. That would be helpful too. Jalen, I'm guessing you're still in the Old Testament. You got to go way more forward than that.
Wait, what is it?
Not quite to Revelation, but right about there. You're probably behind it already.
Are you trying to have me?
I am trying to help you get to Colossians. And yes, I think so.
I just saw
It's on page 1723.
Philippians and Colossians. 3, 22 and 23. So read that for us, please, Jalen.
Slaves, obey your human masters in everything, not just when they are watching you, like people pleasers, but with a sincere heart, out of respect for the Lord. Whatever you do, keep working at it with all your heart, as for the Lord and not for people.
All right. So, talking here about doing the duty that has been given to us. Whether we are living in the vocation as children and we have our houses, our rooms to clean up, or as the question is getting at, we are hired and we are working. By the way, has any of you actually worked a real job besides LaDacia? I know you have. You? Kind of? Well, what have you done?
I helped my grandpa. He used to do this. I don't remember what it was called, but we sell these wood things.
Okay. So, but it was basically with a family thing. It wasn't like you went out and got hired at McDonald's or something. What's that?
I do that.
Yeah. So I expected. I mean, you're a little young yet to be doing that, but every once in a while you get one like LaDacia who's already done stuff. So, yeah. And again, how can we be faithful? We already heard some of the answers, and I'll just put them up on the screen. Now we can put them to pen and paper. So doing our job well. Jalen mentioned showing up to work on time earlier. That's a great one. That's a very important one. Don't underestimate that, especially when you are working in a job that has multiple shifts. Because if you're late, that might mean that the person that's coming off has to stay an extra 10, 15, or whatever many minutes while they wait for you to show up, and they're covering for you, and they need to get out because they got to pick up their kids, or they have a doctor's appointment or something, and now you're making them late for that. So there is a tremendous amount of respect that is shown by showing up on time. And if you have to readjust your thinking so that way you plan to show up early, you do it. When I had my first job, I'd always make sure I'd show up about 10 minutes early. One, it's also good because it helped me to get in the right frame of mind for work. Yes?
My chef makes us show up about 2 hours early so we can start cooking food, and then you have to get salads ready and everything. Then you have to clean because a person forgets to clean the night before.
Well, that's not showing up 2 hours early. It's just showing up 2 hours before the restaurant opens for business. Mm-hmm. You're showing up on time. It's just that you got prep work to do before it opens up, but that is part of the job. Okay, next one. Nate and Joe are college roommates. Joe has a Foot Locker that he keeps his snack food in. Some of Nate's friends know about Joe's stash of food. They break into Joe's locker while Nate is there and steal Joe's food. When Joe asks Nate about it, Nate says that it's not his problem. What does the Seventh Commandment have to say about Nate?
Protect your neighbor and their property.
Yeah, it is Nate's responsibility. Now, understandably, Nate might not have been able to do anything at the time. You know, he might have been outnumbered. But you can still go and report it to the dorm supervisor and say, hey, this happened. Yeah, it's probably going to cost Nate some friends, but are those really the kind of friends you want to have? I know of a case where something exactly like this happened. And the individual's name was Nate. So, inspired by true events. Nate should have told the dorm supervisor. All right. Next question. Question number 4. Is all gambling wrong? Okay, I would agree with that. But what are some questions that we need to consider, or thoughts that we need to consider regarding gambling?
How much money should I spend?
All right. Yup. That's a good one. You can write it down. How much money can I reasonably spend? And a lot of times, in fact, it's good if you are going out gambling, it's good to set aside, like, okay, if I lose this amount of money, I'm done. What are some other thoughts or questions?
Don't step over the line.
All right. Yep. Here's this is always the first important question. What's our motive? You know, what's going on in our hearts? Some people, they get addicted to gambling. All right? Literally. And if they're not there to be doing the gambling, they're literally physically shaking. I think I shared that with you in that packet on Adiaphora, right? There was a story about a guy who he was a compulsive gambler, and he wanted to get to the racetrack, and he couldn't get there, and he wasn't there, and he was actually shaking because he was so hooked on it and wanting to get there. Other thought, is it going to hurt anyone? You know, yes, it could hurt myself, but gambling can hurt others too. If you're married, you got wife, husband, and kids, and you're gambling huge amounts of money, it's going to hurt your family. Families have been ruined by compulsive gambling. Another thing to consider is the particular form of gambling predatory. Like a lot of your lotteries, they prey on the weak. They prey on the poor. Because the poor look at it as a means of escape from poverty. And so they are drawn in and tempted and locked in to buy oodles and oodles of lottery tickets that they can't afford. And they don't win, and that money could have been better spent elsewhere. Greed can be a very powerful thing. Greed is not only the sin of the wealthy, it is the sin of the poor as well. I mean, it's interesting how, and talking about this not terribly long ago with somebody, poor families. I've heard of, at Christmas time, how poor families will sometimes insanely spoil their kids rotten with all sorts of super expensive gifts that they cannot afford. Talking like PlayStation 5 level gifts. I mean, that's you can't afford that. What are you doing blowing $700 or more on your kid at Christmas? I'm reasonably well-to-do. Or at least, well, I should say well-to-do, but I can live comfortably. I'm not wealthy. I'm not, even upper middle class, but I'm fine. I'm content with what I got. I wouldn't even dream of blowing $700 currently on my kid for Christmas. No way, Jose. Other thoughts? Is this something that I can choose not to do and it won't bother me? Am I content with what I have? And perhaps one of the best ones, is this good stewardship or management of my money? I don't like gambling, generally speaking. Like going to casinos, last time I was in Vegas, I didn't gamble a dime. It's wasting money. Now, in my lifetime, I'd probably say that I'm ahead on my winnings, thanks to a couple of slightly larger payouts, balance things out. But I don't do the lottery. I haven't bought a Powerball ticket since, I don't know, 2005 maybe. I know though, as a pastor, that it would bring me far more troubles than it would blessings if I were to buy a Powerball and win the big jackpot. In fact, I wouldn't even be able to be a pastor here anymore if I did that. Not because I'd be required to resign, but because of the impact that it would have on me, my family, and my ministry. And Ladisha's like, why would you have to resign?
Yep.
Well, let me illustrate it for you this way. Several different things might happen. One, I win, let's say, $900 million. Woohoo! There are certain states in America where when you win large jackpots, your name is not required to be shared. South Dakota is not one of them. If I were to win that jackpot, my name would be publicly disclosed. The members here would know. And that would cause problems among the membership. One of two potential problems. One, if I choose to give generously to the church, other people will say, Pastor Odia has the expenses for ministry covered. I don't have to give anymore. We've got a problem. It's a spiritual problem. Or I could preempt that and say, well, I don't want them to have that sort of attitude. They still need to take ownership of their ministry because I'm not going to be here forever. So I am going to give generously to different religious and charitable causes, but I'm not going to give any more to St. Martin's now that I've won than before I won. I'm just going to give the huge amounts elsewhere. And now people are upset with me because they think that I should be giving more. Furthermore, Ladesha, when you win a huge amount of money and people know that you won a huge amount of money, you have every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming out of the woodwork claiming to be your long-lost whatever, or that they're hard up on their luck and they're in need of an extra buck. They get in contact with you and they're hounding you. Please give me money, please give me money, please give me money, please give me money, please give me money. And you say no to them, and you keep saying no to them, and they accuse you of being all sorts of things that you're not. Greedy, unloving, etc. And that's only going to hurt the reputation of the ministry here at the church. Fair or not, it would happen. And so I would have to resign for those reasons. And that's why I don't play those large ones. Now, like I said, have I gambled before? Yes. Do I find it a worthwhile use of my money? Generally speaking, no. Now, if I'm like playing sheep's head or something and playing for quarters, I could get my butt kicked in a night and I'm only losing $5. You can't even go to the movie for $5. I'd say that's a pretty good use of my money. So, all right. Last one here. The Bible shows us how we are all guilty of breaking the seventh commandment. We've broken it with our laziness at work. We've broken it by trashing, and we can also say broken with laziness even in our schoolwork, our assignments, our homework. That is a breaking of the seventh commandment. We've broken it by trashing food that is otherwise good for eating, or by not eating food before it goes bad because we want other food. We've broken with greedy thoughts and hearts that aren't content with everything God has given us. But although we are guilty, there is good news for us. Luke 9:58, Jada.
Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head."
All right, so while Jesus lived in this world, was he out being a greedy grab bag? No. He wasn't pursuing money. What was he pursuing?
His word.
Okay, showing his love and faithfulness to God, obeying God's will, but also why did he come to earth?
To die for us.
Yeah, so he was pursuing us. He was living for us, loving us, using himself to benefit us. Jenica, last passage, 2 Corinthians 8, verse 9. Beautiful passage.
For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and although he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that through his poverty you might become rich.
So in Jesus we see the embodiment of self-imposed poverty. As he literally gives up literally everything to come down to earth and live and die as the poorest of the poor. How do his active obedience and passive obedience give us hope when we break the seventh commandment? That Jesus did these things for us. He kept that seventh commandment perfectly for us and died to make us rich with his forgiveness and the treasures of heaven. Of course it was Thaddeus.
We love Thaddeus.
We love Thaddeus, yes. Thaddeus was my other guinea pig this year.
And you guys like play piano.
Yeah, especially Pirates of the Caribbean. He likes to play that a lot. All right, so to close things out here, the chart, God's gift of possessions coming to us through work, gifts, inheritance. Like I said, you could also throw in certain forms of reward. One thing that we did not cover here, but is covered in the lesson on stewardship, is how God expects us to use our possessions. 4 basic ways: to provide for family, provide for the needy, to pay taxes, and support the work of the church. But as far as some of the other things about what God wants, being content with what we have, being faithful, not being wasteful, or that gets over to the negatives, helping others, and so on. But yeah, not being wasteful, robbing, stealing, whatever. You got greedy thoughts, fraud, dishonesty, laziness, those sorts of things. Pretty straightforward commandment, wouldn't you say, Macy? But still, just because it's simple and straightforward does not mean it's easy for us. Because we love our stuff. Sometimes a little too much. But remember, what is it better to have, the gift or the giver of the gift?
Giver of the
The
gift.
giver of the gift is always better. Even if for only... No, I won't go there and say that. But the giver of the gift is always better to have. And it's better to have God and be found in him than to live our lives only for those gifts. Let's close with the blessing. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be and remain with us all. Amen. Have a good night.